Animation is an effective and diverse mode of communication. It is boundless and fueled by imagination, which gives it power to convey narrative in a unique way and gives the artist free rein of any ideas they should want to explore. Animation goes hand in hand with open-mindedness. The very nature of the medium is to suggest movement, which makes the viewer's interpretation of what they're seeing a key part of the process. It is often used when discussing sensitive topics or trying to communicate stories to children, as relating to a colourful metaphor of human nature can make vital information a lot easier to process. However, live-action mediums also have an important place within cinema and other media. In this video essay, I will be discussing how meanings are changed, enhanced, and communicated through different types of animation versus live action, and pondering the titular question, why choose animation? The question as to why one would choose animation is an extremely broad, abstruse, and borderline unanswerable question, but a good place to start would be the truly cinematographic depictions of non-linear or cyclical narratives, expressions of creativity and imagination. Moth by Alison Shulnick is a film created over 14 months with over 4,500 individual frames of gouache on paper, depicting one or several moths that change and mutate over the course of the 3 minutes and 15 seconds runtime. In its short duration, Shulnick explores themes of death, rebirth, motherhood, body, and metamorphosis. In my opinion, the beautiful avant-garde nature of this film is greatly enhanced by the limitlessness of evolving, straight-ahead animation, allowing the viewer to be swept up in the analogue beauty and its handmade images and patterns. When speaking in terms of experimentation, live action definitely leaves less creative room and more confines of both the unchanging human form and earthly boundaries that create structures of which one must work through. These conventions mean that experimental live-action short films attempting to reach a more profound conclusion or morale end up utilizing methods such as editing, and often end up becoming more theatre-like in their performance when attempting to bend such physical boundaries, such as in the films Meshes of the Afternoon by Alexander Hammond, utilizing non-linear editing to create time loops, Outer Space by Peter Chikasky, utilizing the unpredictable process of developing film reels, double exposure, and point of view, and Pas de Deux by Norman McLaren, where ballet dancers are mirrored, shadowed, and followed by freeze frames of previous moments, which seem to mimic the arcing forms of animation cycles. The fairly new phenomenon of accessibility in relation to filmmaking materials has allowed for a new influx of directors to infiltrate the independent film industry, with names such as Albert Burney, Jack Stauber, and Umami creating films and shorts either with a very small pool of contributors or entirely independent films. Oftentimes, independent filmmakers start out by just making films for fun and self-fulfillment, without any pressure from funding companies or established studios needing to maintain a certain prestigious standard for their films. I think this uninhibited mode of creation can often lead to making pieces of media that can be really special, experimental, and inspiring. On the other hand, the crux of this freedom is that the lack of funding, materials, and actors can be repressive, which is why I believe animation is a fantastic alternative that creators such as Albert Burney and Jack Stauber have really taken advantage of, especially in the digital age, where for the majority of those living in first world countries, the internet can be accessed at the click of a button, and the previously monstrous task of distribution and advertising can be completed with ease. In Burney's case, he created Tux and Fanny in 2019, which is a feature-length collection of 1-minute animated shorts originally posted as standalone clips to the social media platform of Instagram. I think this film is truly special, with Burney's use of a charming pixelated MS Paint-esque universe to frame the two main characters, Tux and Fanny, in their whimsically silly yet very strange and existential adventures.
Кошка покрыта блохами, которые наводняют наш дом.
So from the perspective of an extremely biased animation student, what would I perceive to be a good use of live-action mediums? Well, an obvious choice would be things like live-action performances and West End musicals, but even then, I think an updated animated rendition of Phantom of the Opera would be very interesting. However, I thought about some of my favourite live-action films and TV shows and was noticing a pattern in the geographical and historical contexts of which they were filmed. Taking Vince Gilligan's Breaking Bad as an example, I think the characters such as Walter White and Gus Fring work because the extremity of the characters themselves tiptoe on the edge of realism, and they are grounded by the barrenly realistic wasteland-like setting of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Using the almost grainy film texture and especially the colour grading, the aesthetics of the location is pushed to its absolute limit both visually and narratively, where throughout the 5 seasons the characters seldom travel to other locations unless absolutely necessary, to the point where the town of Albuquerque becomes an integral part of the series. Another example of this is BBC drama The Terror, directed by Edward Berger. The programme is a fictionalised account of Captain Sir John Franklin's lost expedition on HMS Erebus and HMS Terror to the Arctic in 1845–48 to locate the Northwest Passage. In the novel, while Franklin and his crew are plagued by starvation and illness and forced to contend with mutiny and cannibalism, they are stalked across the bleak Arctic landscape by a monster known as Tunbak, a spirit that roams the Arctic plains. In episode 10, titled We Are Gone, there are very few crewmates remaining, most of which have gone insane. This is when the sole medic and surgeon, Dr. Goodsir, meets his end via suicide. Up until this point, the colour grading and tone is extremely ominous and dark, making it even more of a contrast when this scene appears, where the Kuleshov effect is used, cutting between the dying image of Dr. Goodsir and symbolism of seashells and white flowers, symbolising resurrection and good fortune, with unsettlingly angelic music, as though his death was a relief from the horrors he had witnessed on the journey. I think this is an excellent example of live action as a medium that would not have been improved by it being animated, due to the unique way it was shot, creating tension through human interaction and the gritty visual style. Equally, historical and social context can work in the favour of animation, such as in the Japanese fantasy psychedelia film Belladonna of Sadness, directed by Eiichi Yamamoto, based on the book Satanism and Witchcraft by Jules Michelet. It follows the main character Jian, who is abused by the local nobility and is believed to be a woman touched by the devil, which she is. The narrative follows her journey from scared, mistrusted young woman to powerful witch, addressing themes of assault, repressed sexuality, and the corrupt power of the church. The film is animated with watercolour slides, taking on an art style that could be described as Art Nouveau with a psychedelic twist. I think the chosen style complements the narrative greatly, as Art Nouveau was born from a desire to reject the academic art eclecticism and historicism that dominated the 19th century, much like how Jian is using her power given to her by the devil to help the townspeople reject the oppressive authoritarianism of the church. The gorgeous flowing animations, not unlike Franz von Beiro's illustrations and abstract straight-ahead loops reminiscent of the sinuous curves of plants and flowers, illustrate mayhem and sexual liberation, which, when contrasted with the entirely static depictions of the antagonistic priest, where the most movement he is given is a menacing hand reaching out from under his robes, creates an unavoidable visual criticism of the religious beliefs in medieval France. I think this is an example of experimental animation being used to its full potential, where the beautiful art both complements and strengthens the narrative. By this point, I thought I had distinguished a solid view that if a piece of media was tied to a particular historic event or social issue, then live action would work the best. However, there was one outlier to this personal theory, one being the stop-motion animated Anomalisa by Charlie Kaufman and Duke Johnson. Kaufman is known for his offbeat films with ambitious narrative structures and in-depth character studies, which is why he holds a lot of critically acclaimed live-action titles such as Being John Malkovich and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I can't explain it, but something about this story of unattainable otherworldly desires and the unbearable loneliness of being, told through the lens of a stop-motion puppet caricature of a middle-aged British customer service expert, is pure genius. It's almost as if it's so depressingly realistic that the only way to not make the film a horrifying wake-up call would be to use animation to emotionally displace the audience. The puppetry universe immediately plunges the film directly into Uncanny Valley, so the film doesn't even try to have to be strange to achieve it, and this strangeness is perhaps what makes the film such an interesting take on the mysterious prism of consciousness and identity that makes up the human condition. In conclusion, I think that animation is a wonderfully diverse medium that can be used to depict a range of different stories and communicate emotions and ideas in a unique, easy-to-perceive way that both small children and adults can understand. Animation has helped connect people throughout the world in a way that sometimes writing and live-action films cannot, and filmmakers are able to stretch their creativity way beyond what the world as we know it allows them to. They are able to create characters who not only entertain their audience, but through which the audience understands the world and themselves a little bit better.